So let's get a little bit in, at least get the privates aligned. And maybe get through the first stock round. So I'm starting here as first player, going around as I usually do. Here's the problem. I'm not sure this is worth 5. Yeah, it's clearly worth 0, but now you usually don't use a die in an XX game, but I use them for decision making. The reason I'm not convinced is the 2+2 train. There are 10 2 trains. Now with 7 players, we're probably going to see some of the 2+2s come out, but we have to get through 15 of them to make that money back. What does that mean? Well, this costs twice as much and makes $5 a round. This is going to make up its money in, 3 operating rounds, right? It's going to start making income. This, how many operating rounds is it going to be before the 2+2? And, obviously the longer I can hold out, the more cash I get, but maybe that cash could make me more money. So I don't know. I'm assuming it's okay at 5. So I'm going to roll, I guess, 50-50 for the first player. Yeah, he'll buy it. Everybody else I made a check for. I don't know what my limitation would have been, but certainly they had to bowl at least 1-1 to get through, to get a chance to go higher. I don't think it's worth more than $5. And that brings us to the next one, which probably is not worth more than 10. It only makes a $5 income. It's almost certainly worth it. So first player, anything but a 6. Oh, he doesn't want it. Second player gets a choice on it. This doesn't hurt him at all. He'll get first option on the next one anyway. He might as well buy it. 75, 85, 90. Oh, hold on. Other people might be interested in it at a higher price. Oh, maybe. Yeah, let's go to 15 on this. No. Oh, somebody else. Maybe. Nope. I'm going 1 and then an odd die roll. Yeah. Okay. So he indeed gets the second one for his cash. But what's kind of nice for him, he gets the option at the third one. And we're going to move this 2 around to tell us who gets the priority at this point. Okay. This is the fairies. I don't know. I think I'm going to not go into detail of this because this really has very little to do with the game. And I'm kind of blundering around in my thinking on this. I don't, it's hard to tell how much this is worth. $25. Okay, so this takes 4 turns to make the money back. No, 2 turns to make the money back. This takes 3 turns, but starts producing a profit. But it's a higher investment. 3 turns for this, and it keeps going up. But on the other hand, they start coming with more interesting little facets to them. I don't have any real, oh geez, I need this much money at the end. I don't have that kind of familiarity with this game to be able to really think what's safe and what's not safe to buy in terms of these. In the 1830 experience, you kind of won all the minors you can get, all the privates you can get. In 1835, you want the minor companies, but maybe not so much the privates. They may not be interesting. Here, these things aren't really worth a whole hell of a lot. And you're investing cash in them because you can't sell these. You're not going to be getting the money back at all. So they're really questionable whether they're worth more than face value ever. From now on, though, because this guy's making $5 a round, these have to, somebody's going to buy them. Nobody's going to, it's not going to be in a position where everybody passes. People tried. It ended up over here. And when I gave $75 to him, I realized, wow, I've been really overcharging for these. So I gave the correct change for these guys. privates have been distributed. This one went for 120. This one, with its presidency, went for 200. That's its par value. The reason was it went up to 195 over here, and somebody's like, well, wait a minute, why am I giving you $5? It's not exactly that. It's not in the best of locations. But, company's a company, right? I don't know. I think probably starting that company, you probably want at least some bonus for getting it, but whatever. He decided to take that bonus away and hurt himself. Now, these two have gone on the Rocket of China and passed on it. We're on him, and he's got an interesting situation to look at. $20, $35, $15. Everybody makes more money. So this becomes, even though I think it's an incredibly unattractive train, it can get me a 2 train. I mean, it's worth something, but $50 of my money for a 2 train isn't worth a lot. And it doesn't, it doesn't seem to go up. It's like my capacity to make early money is going to be damaged by this. However, if I don't buy it from this guy, these guys probably should have considered it, then I'm kind of counting on this guy with his $15 to step in and do it, which I think is less likely. However, I'm going to pass on it. These guys, this guy maybe, somebody's got the edge on him if he doesn't do it. No, so we're passing all the way up to the last guy. And he's got kind of the, well, if you guys aren't going to do it, maybe I shouldn't either. Yeah, he's going to pass it. He's going to buy it. All right, he gets suckered into it because there are people doing better. And he's got to hope that it's worth something there. So now we're at the point where we calculate out how much money everybody has. And I can guarantee this guy is going to be my first player. He has almost no money. Second player, looks like it's him. So we'll take this $300 here. We'll move these 2 companies over here and his cash, and he's in the number 2 seat. Third player, there's somebody else with under $200 over here. Pull these down. And he's not happy about having to buy the rocket, but I mean, there are other people who'll do worse if he had not bought it. Like, this guy's making 0, but it's hard to see. We have 2 guys at $300 with no privates at all, so they will be the 6th and 7th player. And now 275, 285, 290 here. This guy's next. How did I end up? Oh, with more money, yeah, because I only spent $10, as it should be. Very well. Okay, so now that's our play order, and now it's time to make the decision on these. Now, Queen, unfortunately, starts over here, and the only thing that's really near me is French Indochina. Queen, I got this Tayon, the Belgians. But French Indochina looks interesting. The other side of it, though, is trying to work our way through there. I can make some good money off that and eventually hook up. Which one makes more sense? What do I have? I have this thing, which I can turn in for cash. I don't know. I gotta think. So let's see what we got. Like I said, the Belgians seemed like a good option for the BCR, just because it hooks me up to here, eventually I can hook it up. I'm not sure, other than getting some quick cash or whatever, I'm not sure I'm going to hold this. There's people with $300, you know, in their hands. Now, you can only get the investor for a company you start though. So somebody who drops $300 to take over the Baochang is not going to get it associated with their investor, which is a negative. It's possible that, say, the French might be interested in it, but they're not. The other investors maybe aren't all that interested in it, but being able to set up their investor might protect this a little bit. So maybe he'll get to keep it. Over here, why the Germans? Ferry takes me down to Shanghai. Shanghai's a pretty good city. I'm in striking distance of Beijing. Beijing's a great city. I mean, they're both very good at the end of the game. Seemed like the optimal thing, especially since I have this. Hong Kong to Taiwan is awfully sweet. The French, well, with the rivers, this seemed like a thing that works with the rivers. And I want to take advantage of whatever advantage I have. I would have rather had the Germans or the Belgians, but they got taken. So the only other choice really was, well, do I want the Portuguese who are further from the river? Do I want the Russians who are appealing because of the Russian route? But, you know, here I made the choice of the Portuguese because, again, the run to Taiwan, or actually possibly just to Hong Kong or whatever, that can get to be some good money early on. Problem with them? Well, SCR is going to probably go to the Brits. So maybe the Japanese are better, but the Japanese kind of look like the loser line of the whole thing. The only thing going for them is they got a company right near them. And yeah, they're not far from here, so whatever. And they could also conceivably operate out of one of these that might make bigger money and then hook up in the longer term and not go for the quick bonus. But the thing is, that $50, boom, right in your hands, that's got to be sweet. And I like the idea of picking up, you know, an extra share early off of that kind of money. So that's kind of the bonus of the Japanese, is they can grab a railway pretty fast. Anyone else in that good a position? I mean, you could have done this, right? But he kind of foiled that. So, yeah. Right. And now that everybody's picked one, it's time to buy shares. He doesn't have enough cash to buy a share. So we come down here. He's got priority, for whatever that matters. Over here. Well, he knows what he wants, right? He wants the HKR. Sure. How much can I afford it at? I have 155, which means I cannot afford more than 70. So we'll buy it at 70, which is not optimal by any means. Where's this thing go? It goes down here. But it lets me start my company and start working on it. And I got to get starting capital out to these corporations as well as getting their treasuries out. But I am buying 2 shares. Again, someone else could grab it. But I got to do some mechanical stuff. It's hard to do the camera with this game because there's a lot to do. Catching up on some of that, a lot to do. You got to pick these things too. Now, both people took 20% shares, and they took ABC for the phases because these are my starting companies. I want to make sure they work in those. He's got the engineer, so he could drop D on it later in the game if he needs to keep running them. But he may have some other company that he wants to do that with. The investors get the chip. Only $350 in here, but whatever. Over to the Brits. And we want companies because we want to try to get that $50. SCR looks interesting to us. So we have 175, 180, 195 bucks. 180 could get us to 90. But what did I say? 195. No. So we can't buy 3 shares or a 30% share for a bonus, whether or not we wanted 3 shares or a 30% share. Hard to tell. I don't know how much of a big advantage there is to getting a 30% share at this point. I think I'd rather have the building permit. So we will buy SCR at 90. And again, I gotta shift the certificates around, and that gives a share here. We've seen some others fill out here. Let's see, the Chinkyung over with the French. Obviously, the Russians took the Binzu. Wunan is the closest thing for the Portuguese. They went with it. They're not thrilled. Gets them close to Shanghai, though. It can't be too terrible. Maybe I can break into somewhere cool. Here is the problem, though. The Japanese. Now, if I buy this, that's great. Well, first of all, there's no slots left. I have to check that, but I believe if there are no slots left, you can't start a company at that price. So I'm going to have to drop down to a lower price. I'm not used to that. It's a special circumstance that is in play here. Now, normally, if you're playing with less than 7 people, probably people are wanting to start things at different values. But there's so many people have the $200 to drop on something. I have other options. I could buy up a company. Of course, that gets rid of my advantage here. Is there a company that is really appealing to me right now? Because most of these people can't buy a 3rd share. Why is this guy? Did I spend my money? I don't think I spent my money. He was limited. And did this guy spend his money? We got problems here. 180. I forgot to spend my cash on a lot of these guys. Got so busy with some of the technical stuff, I think I was okay over here. But yeah, now I'm kind of in a... If you look, the yellow ooh only allows a quick connection. So it's almost perfect for what we're talking about here. Now, if the game's going to go for a while in this period, what do? I don't know. Maybe I set up a little differently and do the hookup a little later. But I kind of like the idea of grabbing that $50 right away, you know? Because that probably means an extra share. I can't build through here, so I couldn't pick one of these because while the QSR is not on the board, you're not allowed to place on either of the dots of that, if I'm correct. I'll look that up as well. So 2 things I have to look up. Am I limited? And I'm almost certain I am. And can I not move through the ooh until the dot's there? And I'm pretty sure I read that. Well, I'm right about these, that's definite. I didn't look up the other one, but I'm pretty sure I do remember. And it's not that big a deal. I could still run through it and maybe make the connection if this doesn't get formed before my companies connect. But my companies couldn't connect until the green track comes anyway, because this is a dead end. Without that capacity, you know, why bother? I can start another one here. I might as well get these guys running, so I'm going to go with that and get that little route hooked up and try to get things moving quickly in terms of my cash. Question is, how much money do the Japanese need? How much money do I have? Obviously, I don't actually have to lay track in the first round. Where are the letters? See, the green track comes out in B. So I could actually start the company in BCD and just lay track out of the Japanese to hook it up until that train comes up. I think that's an attractive option in a crazy sort of way. With $300, I don't know. I really don't know. It's not going to be dumping money into that early on. And that's one of the issues is these guys can give your companies a decent amount of cash and you cash in addition to that $50, but I still think the $50 early sounds appealing. So I am gonna try that strategy with them because nobody else is doing it. But I can't start at 100, which means what do I start at? Well, with $300 at 70 a share, I could buy 4 shares total. Some of them would be this HKR, which is very appealing to me, to tell you the truth. Compared to the other companies, I like it, and it's going to be using the ferry, and I think 2 shares of that puts me in his world, and 2 shares of mine is a sweet addition to that I'm able to get with minimal investments. I think that's what I'm going to do. Second shares have fallen. This guy bought the Shinkang, which is $90. That was the most expensive thing he could afford, and it doesn't look like a bad choice. We looked around between people who can't buy anything, but this guy could have bought the SCR, but instead he bought a Hukon, thinking that's set up pretty nicely. That screwed him already, because he was counting on 2 shares of each. Now he can buy more shares of his own, but he only has 1 of these available to him. It's possible that this guy could buy the other one, and he's currently debating it. How much he screws him over by doing that, it's hard to tell, because again, he'll be able to buy the shares of something that's, it's kind of truncated, but it's not in that bad a shape, to be honest. It'll be making money, it'll just not be building track, which is fine, because it's not intending to. So, I gotta make a decision there. Basically, looking over all of these kind of suck. The SCR looks appealing. See, BCR, it's not near anything. The CKR, not bad. Not bad. But the 2 train doesn't work for it. Whereas the SCR can run a 2 train right to Taiwan. So that's more appealing. The BZU, yeah, I don't see any of its runs being terribly exciting. And the WNR, again, not where it wants to be particularly. So, I'm a little bit leaning towards the SCR, but I'm not sure. Say 1 through 4 on it. Alright, we're going to buy the HKR instead, with the intention of hurting him. At the end of the stock round, he has picked up the Shinkang at 90. That left him $70 left for the Quinshan. He would have been fine if the HKR was left out. He could have gotten 1 of each of these. It's usually a bad idea, hold 2 shares of something, but early in the game, it's often pretty damn safe. However, whatever. He's a little pissed at him. And that means priority is going to sit over here. Nobody really tried, and nobody made an attempt to take over a company. They're all just going to run their own companies now. There's an advantage to taking over somebody else's company. But it becomes, those first companies, it becomes much, much less appealing because they have the advantage of the private investor, which, well, if you kind of if you kind of steal the company from the guy who has the private investor, and you don't start a private investor to work on for your own company, you're putting both of you at kind of a disadvantage. This was not that appealing a company. A lot of people had a shot at that. But there were others that the people with $300 could have chimed in on. He might have thought it if he wasn't in such a sweet location. What about the Portuguese? Yeah, they might have been in a better position to do it, just because nothing connects up to Portugal. But I got a longer way to go, so I kind of need to lay that track. Let's see how this game and its strange mechanism for turn order, etc., affects or is affected by how I play. Because normally I take a break and walk away. And quite often that's at the end of an entire operating round. But it's not always. Actually, sometimes I'll walk away right after one company, and that I should be okay here. First thing is the privates. I have to find the cash for them. No income here. He gets 25, etc. I'll be back. A fairly common habit that a lot of players have, and I've sort of taken it up, of putting the money on top of things as they produce, and then at the end of the operating round, you clear that so you know you got all your things. I started to do that and then decided against, because I'm not sure, again, how that's going to be influenced by this, and it's not really something that I do all that often, but I think it actually still applies here, because you still have this cyclical thing. The only problem is you might have to take your money off because there's a stock round in the midst of your operating round. So I don't know how that goes. And now the important thing is I push this. Now we go to the foreign investors. They move from 1 through 7. 1 is the Russian investor here. Oh, you know what? All the companies that started officially have their piece on the board. I don't think that's an issue on this first turn particular. But later when companies start, I do have to start doing that. Okay, so the Russians will show up here. I'm only allowed 1 track build at this point. I could hook up to the BZU, which is my company, fairly soon. Or I could wait a little bit. I think I'm going to start working on hooking them up and not worry too much about not grabbing that $50. I think that $50 is a good deal. But it does mean that this thing has less runs and doesn't toss a lot of money in. But it's not just $50, it's also an extra share. All that extra early money, that sounds really sweet to me. But there might be reasons you want to run these investors for a while before hooking them up. Okay, so what do? I believe I get to run the private investor train right away. Let me make sure of that. Say something one way or the other, and clearly they're able to borrow a train. They don't need any money or anything. We'll run this. So this is 20 plus 20, $40, and it just goes into their cash. 35, 40. Okay. Nothing to flip over for these. I kind of have to do all the private foreign investors before I do anything else. Number 2, down here in Taiwan. How do I want to run this? I think my best move is to connect up with a wide here. These guys always run a single track. Unfortunately, unlike him, I don't get to run right away. So I get this, and I make no money. I don't find these numbers terribly useful. I wish they had the nation's flag on them instead. That would help me identify better. Somehow I kind of remember the nationalities of the investors better than I remember the number of them. But, I don't know. There's games with minor companies that do the same thing. The Belgians over here. So, connecting to BCR is going to be tough. I'm only allowed to borrow one train. I am going to grab a straight piece for them. From there to there. And start running out of Beijing. Number 4. Number 4 is the Germans. The Germans, very interesting. So I may not want to go through blanks, but I don't really see too much extra there. I'm going to grab a straight piece for that. Running out of yellows. And put them like this, because I want to go to Shanghai and, well, wherever. I mean, this isn't hooked up yet, so this would be quicker, but I'm only going to be running a deuce at most for a little while. So that gets me 4, and the only way that I can tell is I've got the token out on the map. I'm going to have real trouble scrambling around once these are out, I think. The Brits. Okay, what's the Brits' goal? The Brits want to hook up to Xichang. How much does it, maybe not right away, how much does that matter? Excuse me. I don't know. But, obviously, I want to play this. I really don't know. Let's put it straight. That allows us the bonus of a early run, and again, the $40. Portuguese company also can set up and get its $40. It's a question of whether you can run these or not right away. It's an interesting one. Slight difference between the companies, I guess. But the choice of track here was kind of neat, because if I bent, well, maybe the English don't hook us up. I want to get up to the WNR fairly quickly, unlike the Brits, who have the SCR hooked up as their, nearest, as their allied line or whatever. This is a little bit of a walk, so I want to be able to keep laying tracks. This might be the better move over, if I was in an isolated area, but this way I can keep building towards my company. And that puts us to number 7, which is the French. The French want to hook to the Shanghai. I'm not sure how big a deal that is to do right away. So, I think we too are going to go for maximum money, and we actually make $50 because we have a better city or better off-map location in French Indochina. And that's these. Now we go to the corporations. Number counters are really causing me difficulties. I look over here, I say, oh, I've got the Biaosheng Railway and the Belgians. Okay, so I look. There's the Biaosheng, where's the Bel... I don't have any idea. Now I have to look back, see the 3, and come back here. It's just not... I don't think about I have the purplish and the 3. Maybe I can change that thinking, but the fact that there is a flag on it, that's what attracts the attention for me. I was also thinking about the privates and hooking them up early or not. Okay, so You can make more money, or not privates, but the foreign investors. You can make money off them. There's no question. They're going to be running an extra 2 train, right? They're going to make the kind of money that your corporation is going to make. And they don't really throw much into, they're not going to improve your corporation. As it stands, you will eventually get the option to take 20% of the money that they make over time. On the other hand, when you do turn them in, you only get 10% of the company, and they may make as much as the company in these early stages. So there's reasons to keep them alive. But there's also this real incentive to get that $50 in that extra share as quickly as possible. The extra share, that money will come to you eventually because you can grab 20% of this. That's worth more than what that extra share is going to produce. If these guys actually added to the value of the railroad, then it becomes more desirable to add them into the railroad because you already have a 20% share at least of that company. But trying to think this guy out. He wants to get up to the Belgians. That's a long and expensive route. And this can go away. It serves no more purpose in this game. And he wants to make money. And I kind of think the ooh here is probably my best path. So, only allowed to build 1 track because we're not in the 3-phase yet, I think. Yes. I am allowed to buy a train. Or more than 1. Well, next turn I only need 1. And in fact, I'm not going to get to that second train until I hit here at the earliest. I could have set it up so I have a little sharp turn. Not really interested in that. So I'll pay $100. Buy myself a single train. This goes there. Although I'm sure it's going to move down. And my stock value goes back. Now I'm still going to flip these over because then they all end up in the right order. At least when there's a big pile. We move it to executed. Where's the CKR? It's down here. Has some desire to get to the French. Unfortunately, this is the best location nearby. Control of this, I'm not going to get because he's set up so he goes right into it. So I am going to lay a sharp track here. CKR. These tokens are actually officially there. Next turn, I could conceivably run 2 trains. If I do that, this will have already collapsed. These are worth 30. I'm just going to buy 1 train at this moment as well. Because I think I want to put a little bit of cash into this before I dump it. Not a lot, just a bit. BZU. BZU wants to get this eventually, but the shortest it can go in reality, 1, 2, 3 is a 4 train to do the whole run. That's quite a ways from now. This is not a terribly exciting location. Delay or try to hook up early. I've already got some money. Keep making money. That money dumps into my railway. I'm getting tempted more and more to the delay side of things. rather than easy early money. I don't know. Odd for delay. Yeah, we'll delay. Put this here, and I too will buy only one train. Now by doing this, we're slowing the next stock round out. If we bought a couple of trains, we're making it more likely that we'll get to a point where nobody buys a train. Wunan. Wunan's over here. We're going to have to pay track right away. We're worried about the Portuguese. Okay, what are the Portuguese? They're number 6 because I can't look for the Portuguese flag, which is over here. We'll take a wide curve. We technically can't use a train. That seems like a bad idea. We've been forgetting companies here. This is going to be a problem. Because I got the turn orders over here, and I'm paying attention over here. Well, I'm not paying attention over to the stock value because of the turn order. So, skipping a turn, that doesn't seem clever, does it? On the other hand, having to pay to build track again doesn't seem all that great either. I don't know the answer. This is not going to be easy to hook up for whoever has that. For me to hook too. So, I will, I think, take a Sharpie. I really hate not building track to the company that I'm trying to connect to, but I think that's fine. I will build this. Now that cost me 20 bucks, so that's 120. And I get 80 back. I get my 2 train. This moves over. This moves across. The one problem with the wooden chips is they create a big pile, and I'm really likely to bump it. And this slides down. SCR. I'm an SCR. Like I said, we're going to have trouble getting... we could just hook the Brits up real fast. But why we do that? Why we do that? We go to Taiwan instead. So we're going to play this. We get our... Not going to be building much track, but that's okay. We spend 100 bucks on the train. I don't see anybody saying, oh, I need 2 trains right away. Slides down, down. No money made. What's this next one? HKR. Is trying to hook up to the Germans. Well, the Germans, we have to go recheck, are number 4. Because we see the German flag, we see German word, we don't see the number 4, especially because of this sort of, let's make an Arabic number that looks kind of like Chinese writing, and just doesn't register as easily as maybe a regular number 4 in Arabic would, in standard font. Let's put it that way. Okay, so we got a problem with this company, which is I have already set up my private to go in there. Now, cash isn't all that valuable to me. So this was kind of a mistake, and I'm beginning to see that. Why is cash not all that valuable? Because people keep buying trains. As long as people keep buying trains, if I get a pile of cash from, say, closing my German investors out, I don't really gain anything for that. I guess I get the share, and that makes up for something. But I have already set this sucker up in a certain way. So we're going to build what we've got set up, which is we are going to hook this up. HKR shows up here. Now here's where things get kind of funky. I don't have a train yet. I buy one. I buy two, because I'll be in here too, burning through this money. I get the little chew marker. I did not pay out. And does this trigger this? I don't believe it does. I'll look it up. But this is the one place where the rules have kind of a problem that I've seen so far, which is this is only supposed to happen in the privates, in the foreign investor's turn. So if the foreign investor doesn't get a turn, which is I think how it's worded, an operating round or an operating turn in the after the revolution, they never get a chance to merge, and that's clearly not the case. There's something that completely obviates that right afterwards. Let me just make sure that I haven't just crushed them, and that they do get their next operating phase and get to make a few bucks off this. Actually, very oddly worded on top of that. As soon as the two railways have at their disposal a joint network, station markers no obstacle, the foreign investor is joined to the normal company. Okay, as soon as, that's now, right? This happens at the end of the foreign investor's turn. Okay, I guess not. But from phase B3, they become inactive. They have no more operating rounds and their assets are frozen until the connection conditions are met. Lots of interesting implications there. You have one sentence and its parenthetical are completely contradictory. I'll take the parenthetical because that's the harder to justify being there. And then you have the communist condition seems to indicate one of a couple of things, neither of which I think is the case. One of them is they will never actually fall into their company once the communists are there, because they don't ever get operating rounds again, and that's the only time that they fall in. Except it says until the connection conditions are met, which read strictly seems to indicate that when the connection conditions have been met, they do get one last run. Which again, I think is not what's intended, but God knows these rules are not at all tight. All right. I can live with it. But I could see people playing it in different ways. Primarily, I think this connection you can't justify at this point. It will happen after they run. The only question really that seems to make sense to me is, do they get a magical extra run during the communist era or after the communist revolution, in which they're able to make money? And I know some rules lawyer types who would argue that that's the case. I am not going to play that way, but okay. So now we're on this blue thing, the QSR. The intention of the QSR was to hook directly up to the Japanese company. Does that make sense? I think a little bit of delay. I'm becoming more and more convinced a little bit of delay is a good thing. So I am going to set this up this way. Japanese. They'll hook up eventually. Find the QSR. It's blue. They're over here. I think I make a little more money this way. I spend $100 on my single train. That down, that there. This over. We have finished the operating round. I have a bunch of tokens to flip. And I guess we can just go back the other way on the next operating round. This suggests differently. So for now, because I'm new to the game, I'm going to do a little bit of mechanical garbage to get these here and flip those. Most XX games that I've played, it's either one more operating round where maybe you break even, or we jump to a stock round right now, which means buying shares is on the first turn of the game is usually not very useful. It's really a matter of getting your share purchases, projected values, etc., getting your stock actions out of the way, jockeying for that. If there's something that's really good, picking up, selling it out or whatever. But what we have here is a situation where you wanted all your money invested in that first turn because you don't know when you're going to get another stock round. And that's the question with cashing these guys in. They're making more money if you let them run for a while. That extra $50, you don't get to churn it right away. And that'll be the big disadvantage he has, is that I think a lot of these companies are going to want another train. No idea how the trains fall, though, how quickly. There are a lot of 2 trains. There's like 5 of most of the others. And then let's see when they rust, because that's of interest. Here we go. It's a rust column. So the 4 train kills the 2 train, 4 plus 4 kills the 2 plus 2, 6 kills the 3, 6E kills the 3 plus 3, and the 4 and 4 plus 4 die on the 8 and 8E. So this should be a pretty standard train falling, I think. There are a lot of companies, though, available. Like a whole lot, right? 3, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14 companies. Yeah, that's a fairly large amount. There are a couple of extra deuces, and some of these are a little bigger than in some of the games. So it looks like it's going to be a pretty standard train fall, but we'll see. Running the privates. I did the private, paid them out, and started running the foreign investors. And I realized I screwed up massively here. I picked this up with the intention of hooking up. So we're going to have to hook these up here. And as that was the last company to have gone before this, we're not really, changing that much. I have no build capacity at this time. I couldn't have bought a train. I would have just been continually losing money. Which means I do get to make my run. Whether or not I want to build this, sort of the last track I get to build. I think I want to build this, actually. Not allowed. I can't cover that up. All right. So I will build the track that I'm allowed to build. These little things have to be maintained even though they're not on yellow track or anything. All right. And that generates a run for me. I get $50. I can take 20% of that $50, which is 10, into my own pocket as this crashes into there. I get the additional share. The minor company goes away. I'm kind of running out of places to slip things easily. And I get an additional $50 for having made the connection. And now I no longer have the private. Do I want this dot? No, I do not want that dot. I think I want this dot because that puts me in a nice place elsewise. And that's the second of the runs. And I had to do it this way because I had made this choice. I had no real other option. Had I known this was going to happen, I might have bought another train. But I'm okay with this. It gives me some flexibility. Maybe by the time I'm coming out, I can buy a more expensive, cooler train. A point where there's some interpretation. The Belgians hooked up, made their run. Or the Germans. They are hooked up. I can lay some track, which I think I will. I don't know which way to go. I think I'll go this way. So I got the ferry bonus, but here's the problem. My ferry bonus, this guy, says I don't have to pay anything on the ferry penalty. That's what that little red circle means there, I guess. However, it's for companies. And this is a private investor, or a foreign investor technically. This is not a company. So I don't think it gets any benefit off of it. I think only the corporations do. Which means I'm only going to make $30 off my run before I crash. And then we have that crash. Is this a token I terribly need? It's an interesting token. I'll definitely say that for it. Because this turns into a $70 town. This is the block to that town. Now, I'll be able to hit the town no matter what. And Hong Kong is just as good, and China is just as good. I probably want a dot down here and a dot somewhere over there that I can operate with. So I don't think I'm going to take this one. Although it might be of value. We don't know for sure. So that's kind of tricky. And then I get my payoffs, which I have to calculate. That's like $6 out of the 30, and then the rest goes into the company, and then the extra share and the $50 payout. Process through the rest of the foreign investors. I guess the only one with a real option to hook up already is the French. They could have built this. I chose not to because that gives me one more run with them, maybe with a better train, who knows. It seems worth getting just a little bit more, and I'm close enough. I'm going to get most of the bonus. And I think people are going to buy trains, so I don't think I'm going to get a stock round before that next run. So it all sounds good to me. And that means we head down to the regular corporations. For those of you who watch most of my videos, I have the good news that at least my shipment is due to come on Sunday. Hey, look, there's a squirrel walking across my highway, checking everything out. Anyway, let me pick something up. So, maybe this ordeal will be over, and I hope that everything gets delivered in good shape. CR is the first company running and going to actually make a profit at this point. Paid to lay some track. Our 2-train is going to give us $50 or $5 a share. This share doesn't get anything, but this one does. And it makes $10. Let me push this forward. And again, I'm going to flip these over. It just helps. Even if it's not the system of record. Decides to continue delaying the game. $4 a share run. They're not connecting up to my French investors for various reasons. Get some more cash in there. And paid out. And now, I can't remember about this river company. It's got to be something I pay some attention to, that I can blast through those without any cost. But I am going to buy a second train, which does a few things. Moves this up. It's the second to last two. But it's going to up my income a little bit, make things a little more attractive, just in terms of how much I'm making. Nobody else is invested in me, so that's cool. Who else has two trains? This one's sweet. And as we make it to the end of the round, SCR, HKR, with its two chews, both get to 8. SCR is able to do it just with one because of the Taiwan line. Taiwan's a valuable place. This is just a doinker. One thing I think I forgot to mention, when you clear and go to a stock round, you get rid of all the current trains because nobody's wanted one. They go obsolete. This is a neat rusting mechanism and train speeding mechanism. So if the game starts getting stalled, it won't stay stalled. There's a mechanism in place to prevent that. Some of the games have discarding a train every turn. We saw that in one of them recently. This, I think the Swiss one or something. This one has another way to get through that hurdle, because some of the games have a real problem with that, where it's not to anybody's advantage to buy a train. They're usually games where I think there's too many trains, where it's kind of weird. It's like, I guess it opens up some flexibility where you could buy more trains than you normally would, but there's not really a lot of opportunity to make money off of those extra trains. So you don't want to buy them. They're not going to last long or whatever. Well, there's some way to get rid of that. I don't know how many games this affects. I've seen it in 2038 and 1870. Those are the two games that really have that problem. And it seems like those are games where the train set was deliberately bloated, and it was an intentional design decision. Okay, let's take a look. The one questionable thing, Quinshan here, I don't know how questionable, bought a dot, bought another train, and pretty soon they'll be running two trains. That seemed advantageous at this point. And by buying a train, though, means all that extra money I'm getting isn't as likely to turn over. It's quite possible that people could swallow and not take cash in order to buy a train and just keep this cycle going and going and going. And maybe that there may never be another stock round, depending on how people play. I'm sure there will be, but you can see where this mechanism opens up some interesting options. I have some mechanical stuff to do, shifting all the tokens, flipping those. But yeah,